Hi, I'm Chef Phil Hart. Welcome to Food from the Heart. Today we're going to be making a classic Spanish gazpacho a la Creole style using local ingredients from our garden. Today we have Roma tomatoes, a nice green poblano pepper, some jalapeno peppers to give it a little kick, a little spice, a nice sweet red bell pepper to balance off the heat, also some English cucumber. We have pea tendrils as a garnish. These are very nice and much in season in the springtime. Lemon to offset the acidity of the tomatoes. Bread as a thickening agent. Some sherry vinegar, which is classic of Spain, and some garlic. I'm going to begin by chopping up our vegetables before I put them in the blender to be pulverized. I'm going to begin by peeling this English cucumber because I think this would probably take the longest time. I'm taking off the ends here, cutting it in half so it's easy to work with. I don't have a vegetable peeler, so I'm using a paring knife. Sometimes as a chef, you have to improvise and use what you have, so here I am. Now, the reason why I chose to make a gazpacho is I had one of the best gazpachos in my life when I went to Spain a few years ago for my birthday. My friend's father prepared a Spanish style gazpacho. I've always had it, the Central American way, never authentic Spanish way. So I fell in love with that. So now I'm making that here today. So that's how that goes. But I'm gonna add a little bit of touch of New Orleans to it. Me being I'm from New Orleans, by adding some local shrimp, because shrimp are big in Louisiana. Also, some crawfish tails are in season right now, and some jumbo lump crab meat as a garnish. And to cool things off, I'm gonna add some chopped up fresh avocado, a little touch of lemon again to kind of offset the acidity of the tomatoes and any other acidic ingredients that I'm going to add in there, like the vinegar. Um, and also the bread here, the brioche bread, I'm going to be using this as a thickening agent for the gazpacho so it's not too soupy or too runny. Now I'm just finishing peeling up these cucumbers. I'm going to dice them up, add them in the blender. Also, I'm going to move on to my Roma tomatoes and the bell peppers. Then I'll add all the liquid. The liquid being on the bottom will help all the ingredients pulverize to a nice consistency versus putting all the solid ingredients on the bottom and it's just going to be a mess. Now I like to work clean, so I always like to have like I guess what you would call a garbage bowl nearby to put all my scraps in. These ingredients I like to, when I garden at home, I like to keep all my vegetable and fruit scraps to contribute to my compost when I'm doing organic gardening. So I always save that stuff. Now I'm just quickly dicing up these cucumbers to add to the blender. I also like to add some fresh herbs when like soft herbs like basil, some fresh cilantro to the overall to add to overall flavor profile for my gazpacho as well. But today I'm going to keep it simple by just adding a little garlic and some jalapeno for a little extra flavor to kind of punch it up a little bit. So the thing I love about Louisiana is all the abundance of local seafood. And another reason why I chose to incorporate some shellfish to the table or to the introduction of the gazpacho here. Like, for example, when I go home, I can go anywhere pretty much around town and find local fishermen on the side of the road selling like things like uh, crab meat or shrimp or crawfish, live crawfish, um, soft shell crab, soft shell crawfish, like anything like that. And the oysters are phenomenal back home as well. So sometimes I do a little gazpacho and add some fresh shucked oysters in there, do a little oyster shooters, so, which is great. Now I'm adding the cucumbers to my Vitamix blender. On to the Roma tomatoes. Again, I always save my scraps for the garden. If you enjoy gardening, I think it's a great way to utilize your leftover ingredients and not let it go to waste. Now, the general idea, the ratio of ingredients from cucumber to tomato, I usually use 2 parts tomato to 1 part cucumber. And I offset it by adding a little bit of punch of flavor with the peppers and definitely the heat from the jalapeno, because I mean, we like our, spice down in Louisiana. But I don't like to overkill the palate either by using too spicy of ingredients. So I don't use overkill of spice. And that's a huge misconception. People from New Orleans, we like our spicy food, but I don't like it super spicy because it just numbs the palate and you don't know what you're eating, and it's just pure heat. And I don't think that's a pleasant dining experience at all. So I'm almost done dicing all the necessary tomatoes I need. I'm gonna dice up a couple of the peppers here. Then I'll top everything off with some of the sherry vinegar, a little kosher salt, some fresh cracked pepper, and some extra virgin olive oil. And actually, the extra virgin olive oil I'm using today is a local olive oil, actually from Georgia. So I'll try to use a lot of local ingredients to keep the economy stimulated in the wherever region of the country I'm living in at the time. And I love my New Orleans, so no other city like it. And this is a neat trick to cutting, to keeping the rib intact and the seeds intact in the pepper. If you're doing this by the case, like most chefs do, like cutting bell peppers or any type of produce by the case, I think that's a very clever method to taking the ribs and the seeds out of your pepper very easily. All right, a neat trick that I like to teach people that I train to keep the ribs inside of a pepper and the seeds intact is to cut the pepper starting with the base on the bottom, and then you basically t- kind of like cut off the pepper into like petals of a flower. I usually cut like 3 or 4 per pepper, and then what I do is run my knife horizontally across the pepper to kind of take the ribs off. And again, I save all this stuff and I compost it for my garden at home. That's what I like to do. Try not to waste anything. Now I'm going to start dicing these peppers. Also, I like to multitask in the kitchen, so I have a pan heated up here on the stove to start sauteing my shrimp to kind of alleviate some of the time here. So now I'm going to add some of this local Georgia olive oil to the pan. Get it to a nice hot smoke point. What that means is when you start to see the oil sizzle and separate from the center of the pan, and then you can obviously see the flames. Now what I'm going to do is season these shrimp with a little kosher salt and a little black pepper, fresh cracked that is. And I don't want to add the shrimp to the pan too soon, otherwise instead of sauteing them, you will actually be steaming them. They won't be cooking at all. Now I'm just mixing them up to distribute the seasoning. You can also, instead of using salt and kosher salt and black pepper, I like to use Tony Sasserins. That's a big thing in Louisiana. Add a little cayenne pepper if you want a little bit of heat to it. Now I'm going to rinse off my fingertips on a sanitary napkin here because you want to keep things sanitary and clean at all times. You don't want to get anyone sick. So I got my pan hot and the oil is definitely at its smoke point. Now I'm going to add my shrimp to the pan. I also like to space the shrimp out when I'm adding it to the pan so again they don't steam. I want them sauteed, not steamed. While these are cooking, I'm going to also continue chopping up my vegetables with a gazpacho, get that blended. I think I'm going to crank up the heat on the pan because I'm adding cold shrimp to a hot pan, so obviously that's going to bring the temperature of the pan down. So I'm gonna just turn it up a couple of notches. Now while those are sauteing, I'm gonna go ahead and continue dicing up my peppers, adding them to the blender. Kind of get the speed going up on this a little bit more. And I don't like to add the bread too soon to the gazpacho due to the fact that you don't really know how thick.
Hold on, bring it back, chop it again. You
Okay.
don't want to add that
Okay.
to the gazpacho. And action.
All right. I don't like to add the brioche bread too soon to the gazpacho after, because I want to kind of pulverize it in a blender a little bit to see the viscosity, meaning the thickness of the soup, before I try to adjust any thickness, because I may or may not even need the bread because it acts as a thickening agent. And another thing to be wary of is you don't really have to worry about having perfect knife cuts because this is all going to be blended anyway in the blender. So, but I always say practice makes perfect. So why not practice your knife skills when making a nice, cool, refreshing gazpacho in the summertime, especially in Louisiana. I'm gonna give my pan a quick shake real quick for the shrimp because I see in the pan here the shrimp are starting to turn a little pink. That's an indicator that they are definitely getting done on one side. So I have to shake it up so they get done and cook evenly. I don't want one side to overcook versus the other side. Almost done getting all the ingredients in the blender. Got the shrimp going here. Use this fork. Shrimp smells good. Bad boys are ready. Now, moving on to the gazpacho, I'm going to add a couple cloves of fresh garlic. I like to use a lot of garlic and a lot of things that we cook at home, especially in Louisiana. Like garlic goes pretty much in everything. And to not waste the garlic skins here, I also add that to my growing compost pile of vegetable and fruit scraps there. I'm just going to start with 3 cloves of garlic. I think 3 cloves is plenty, so I don't want to put too much garlic in it. I like to have balance of flavor here. And I'm not even going to worry about chopping that up. It's going to get pulverized in the blender anyway. All right, I'm squeezing a lemon, cupping my hands to catch all the seeds. I don't want the seeds to go into my gazpacho. Now I'm going to add a little extra virgin olive oil. That's going to trickle to the bottom. A couple turns of cracked pepper. A little kosher salt. And some cherry vinegar. I'm going to add all that. Now I'm going to pop the top on. Turn it on. Blend away. While that's blending, I'm gonna cut a little jalapeno, which I forgot to cut. No worries, this is gonna give me more time to blend my gazpacho. And I always like to take the seeds, some of the seeds out. Sometimes I leave a little bit in, depending on what level of heat I want the gazpacho to be. I don't want it too spicy though, so I'm gonna take some out. And it's looking good so far. Now I will chop a little bit of the bread because I'm looking at the thickness of the gazpacho and I kind of want it a little bit thicker. So I'm probably going to start with decrusting 2 slices of this brioche here. And we're just going to add that in and let it blend away. And this acts as a thickening agent. All right, I'm going to take this avocado, I'm going to dice it up, allow the gazpacho to continue blending, clean the area up, and we'll go right to plating. Welcome back. Now we're ready to plate. We have here our blended gazpacho. In this bowl, we have our cooked shrimp, our crab meat, and our diced avocado with a little lemon vinaigrette, which is basically freshly squeezed lemon juice, some extra virgin olive oil, salt, and pepper. Very simple. Now I'm going to begin by inserting our seafood avocado salad inside of this PVC pipe here. This is customary of chefs to use in the industry for presentation purposes. So I'm going to begin by adding some of the crab and the avocado. Since the shrimp are kind of big, I'm going to put those on top, not necessarily in the tube, they won't fit. And kind of press them down in there. And it's okay if a little bit spills out. It's going to be covered with gazpacho anyway. Now, take the tube off. I'm going to pour the gazpacho around the perimeter of the seafood salad. Now I'm going to finish it with some of this local Georgia olive oil here around the perimeter, just to add a little bit more umami to it. And I'm going to top it with some of our beautifully cooked jumbo shrimp, like so. And it's going to be topped off with some microgreens. It's okay if it falls apart. Well, local pea tendrils here. And there you go. Beautiful seafood gazpacho. Don't go anywhere because we're going to come back and make our fried rice collar balls. Welcome back. Now we're going to make some rice collars. They're basically a rice cake indigenous to Louisiana. They were brought over by the African slaves that migrated from Senegal because they were great rice cultivators, and they brought that to the city of New Orleans. And they sold those on the streets and all throughout the French Quarter, all along Bourbon Street and in Congo Square predominantly. So we're going to begin by, in this bowl I have here mixed, I have some pre-cooked cold rice, um, about 6 tablespoons of just all-purpose flour, a couple tablespoons of baking powder, some salt, some nutmeg to spice it up a little bit. Um, Also, a little bit of vanilla is in here with the couple beaten eggs. And what I'm going to do is add the wet ingredients to the dry. So it's a very simple recipe. All you got to do is mix all your dry with the rice and all your wet in one bowl, and you mix the two together. That's called the blending method, by the way. Now I'm beating the eggs and the vanilla here in this bowl. And I do have a pot here on the stove getting hot, and now you can see the vapors getting hot in the pan. You don't want to get too hot, otherwise the oil will make your food taste very bitter and not pleasant at all. Now what I did in this bowl here is I created a little well in the center of the bowl here with all the dry ingredients and the rice. And I'm going to add the wet in the center of that well. And kind of gently fold in the egg vanilla mixture into the rice, flour, and spices, and so on and so forth. Now these rice cakes or rice fritters, if you want to call them that, they're very popular served during breakfast time. You can actually serve them for brunch. They're very popular for New Orleans jazz brunch as well. Or you can even serve them for dessert. When I do dessert with them, I usually pair them with a nice local Creole cream cheese ice cream and some local strawberries from Ponchatoula. Now you do want to step back because rice does pop, as you can see. You will get burned. As you can see, I'm gently spooning in the rice fritter mixture into the hot oil. And keep in mind when you're adding cold product to hot oil, it is reducing the temperature of the oil itself as well. And these don't take very long to cook at all. When these come out of the oil, you would typically douse these with generous amounts of powdered sugar, as you would a beignet. These take only about maybe a minute and a half to 2 minutes per side to cook. I like to get a nice light golden brown on these. There you are, beautiful rice collars from New Orleans. This dish again was brought over by the Senegalese slaves that were migrated over to Louisiana, and they were expert rice growers, so they brought that tradition to Louisiana and they birthed this dish here. Again, you can pair this with some local, fresh, seasonal fruit, um, some ice cream if you want something hot, something cold, and enjoy it. I'm Chef Phil Hart. I hope you enjoyed the two wonderful regional dishes I prepared for you today from Food from the Heart, and I hope to see you next time.